talk about one of the most famous clear and Irish sportsmen boxers of all time, maybe not officially recognised, but definitely will be now tonight, Michael McTigue from Kilnamona, who became the world's light heavyweight champion 100 years ago this year, St. Patrick's Day in 1923. So first of all, Nicholas, I understand you're a relation of Michael, a long time. Can you just explain that?
Yeah, he'd be my granduncle. He'd be my father's uncle.
Yeah, and he was a native of Kilnamona, and this was like an awful lot of Irish people. He travelled abroad to make his fortune, his fame and his fortune, and he definitely did that. So he went out to America and he got involved in boxing, of course, which was very popular at the time in the early 1900s. Just a small bit about that. It was a huge sport.
Yeah, he left his young enough fella. He's actually my grandmother Mary. She was Mary McTigue, Mary Ryn. She went to America, but she was young enough before she got married. And the story is that she went to America, but she actually came home. Not many come home from America, but at that time, but she came home and she had an affair for Mike. And Mike was the only young fella then. He took off. I think he went to England first. He from England, as far as I know. And he headed off and he arrived in New York. As a young lad started working in the docks in New York, he would meet haul meat that time. We haul the meat off the trucks, and that was his job, And one day he was down in the docks, and his boss, who was Jewish, got into a bit of a tangle with two truck drivers over money, naturally enough. And Mike was standing there, and he didn't know if he takes on the two truckers, he's going to get a licking, and as he says, and then if he didn't, his boss was going to sack him. So he was left in, but he decided anyway to stand up for his boss, and he knocked out the two truck drivers. He was a very strong man, and he knocked them out. And his boss said to McTigue, he said, "You're too good for the docks," he said, and he got him a trainer. That's how he started boxing, quite accidentally, really, like. So, he didn't set out to be a boxer.
And of course, at the time, boxing was huge, and there was only 8 divisions, we'll say. So you have to work your way up along, we'll say. So there was nothing you had to fight the man above you just to move up along the ranks. So it was a real tough business at the time, a real tough hard slog for him to walk up along the ranks.
Yeah, the 1920s was the golden era of boxing, really. Like, it was a huge sport at that time. Every sport was huge, I suppose. But it was a huge draw, boxing. It drew huge crowds to Madison Square Gardens, to Yankee Stadium, all over. But when Mike would have started off boxing, Mike McTigue, he would have started off in clubs around New York. He was fighting for a purse. He was a journeyman fighter, I suppose you could say. So you got a purse. Every fight you took, you got your purse. That's how he was making his living. So it was a tough business, because the people you boxed in the 1920s, some of them wouldn't be boxers. They were fighters. They were brawlers. They were pulled in. You had to face all these guys. So he actually became a very defensive boxer, and he had a unique style for that time. He had great feet, and he was very defensive. He was impossible to hit him. He had that kind of a style. So he was a scientific boxer, I suppose you could say. He was probably before his time. Normally, it was just toe-to-toe, two guys winning and the last man standing. But Mike developed a style of his own, and successful. He eked out living at boxing, and he got success then when he went up to Canada. He went up to, and he fought in Canada for a good bit around Quebec, and he became the middleweight champion of Canada, which was a fair achievement for his day. And remember, Paul, there was only one belt in those days. There was no unification fights. You were champion. That was it. There was no 3 or 4 belts, or there was no easy belts to be won. You had to take on the best to get to be a champion. So to be middleweight of Canada was he had that to his credit, I suppose. But he would have fought in New York for 10 or more years, before he got a shot at the title fight.
Yeah, we go on to them, I suppose, night heavyweight. And at the time, of course, there was a great French boxer called Carpentier. He was one of the most famous boxers, not alone in France, but in the world at the time. And I think he actually fought the great Jack Dempsey for the heavyweight title maybe afterwards. He was an outstanding fighter. Yeah. So he was probably one of the main guys. And you had this guy called Baton Siki, the famous guy that Mike fought above in Dublin, St. Patrick's Day. So he wasn't just fighting lads that were just He was fighting the top, the criminal, the crime, as the man says. He was up against all the top guys at the light heavyweight division.
Oh yeah, George Carpentier was the darling of France, like, you know, and he was very famous. And he fought battling Psyche. He wasn't supposed to lose. It just wasn't supposed to happen. And as a matter of fact, Psyche said after that he was supposed to take a fall, like, you know, take a dive. But he said Carpentier hit him in the 6th round and hurt him, and he went down on one knee. And in that split second, he decided he wasn't going to take it. And he got up and he knocked Carpentier out, which was a fair feat to knock, you know, a world champion boxer. He knocked him out in the 6th round. That was some feat by Siki. So he became the champion of the world, light heavyweight champion of the world, and that night it was a big shock, I think, to box, and particularly because Siki was from Senegal, so he was black, he was coloured, and if you must remember the times, the 1920s, racism was rampant, I suppose, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
So Siki had a problem, like, you know, after that, because nobody wanted to fight him. The British wouldn't allow their fighter to fight a black man and be beaten. It just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't have got a license to fight in Britain. And that's where McTigue decided he'd done locks and he had a few about put together. He came to Ireland, brought his wife and children, and came to Ireland. And to pay his fare, I suppose, he decided to take a few fights in England. And he fought Harry Greb, he would be the British champion, and he beat 2 other fairly handy boxers as well. So I suppose he put his name down there then, like, as well, and he was just in the right place at the right time. And there's a guy called Singleton who I haven't heard, I don't know too much about him, but he was a promoter. He was from Dublin, I think. He was a boxing promoter, and he saw the opportunity. Siki had nowhere to go with his title, and he needed a payday, because he didn't get that much, I think, for initially winning. So he needed to get a payday. He had nowhere to go. They didn't want him fighting in America either, and so Singleton was it was obviously a very clever man, and he put this fight together. Here's McTigue, fits the bill. We'll throw him in there, and he'll take on the world champion. And it was just the right place at the right time. There was another problem then, of course. The Civil War was on it. It was 1923.
Yeah.
And the Civil War is going. That's a great news probably as well, because they didn't want him fighting. They didn't want any sport in Ireland that time. You know, they wanted the anti-treaty people did not want to fight. They didn't want any sport happening. They wanted it all stopped, you know, because of this Civil War.
Yeah.
But they got around it anyway, and I think in the end they probably were happy to see a man fight for a world title in Ireland. It probably was the one thing, like, well, we've got a guy here with a chance of winning a world title, and we didn't have many world champions at that stage. There was a couple of lads from North Clare, from up near from Lisdoonvarna. They had won titles back in the day as well, like, so. But he was a guy who was going to fight for the light heavyweight championship of the world. So, you know, it was hard to get a fight on in Dublin, because the guns were blazing. They said they were going to blow up the theatre. As far as I know, they came within close distance and let off a few bombs, but they didn't actually bomb it. So, first of all, Siki was a very brave man to come to Ireland at that time. You know, can you imagine, would you go to where there's a war on today, you know, to go to Kyiv or somewhere to fight? So he was very brave to come. I suppose maybe desperation, maybe as well, that he needed to defend his title. But he came, in fair play to him, like, and he was well received in his country, and you know, he was a big star, like, coming. And they said after the fight, they said he was meant to come to Ireland on St. Patrick's Day and fight in Iceland. They said he was meant to do that, like, you know. So that's how the fight came about anyway, like.
Yeah, and amazingly enough, if you go on YouTube, there's actually, I don't know the channel, there's actually a number of minutes of the actual, there's an old footage of the fight, and it's a bit, you can actually see the fight, some old footage of it. So it's actually amazing to see this back 100 years ago. fair play to the fellow whoever did it, or someone might have touched it up and said, but you can actually go on YouTube and watch a small number of minutes, but it's actually very fascinating to watch history actually in action with it, you know.
Yeah, we actually there was a lot of tracking down. My aunt was trying to track down in America, was trying to track down that film for years, and eventually they tracked it down. And John Fitzpatrick from Kilnamona and Michael McTigue from Kilnamona actually got their hands on it. But it was only for private viewing, and then after a few years, they relented to people and said, you know, that they could use it.
Yeah.
And it was used it was used in the documentary. So it was amazing. We didn't know that fight was ever, you know, when I was young lad, nobody ever knew that there was actually a film of it. So it was amazing to actually see his father lifting him up. Kipling McTigue, he was the man who he went into the ring and lifted him up. There wouldn't have been many from Kilnamona there on the night, but there was a huge crowd in Dublin. It was a huge event, worldwide event. The world title fight and an Irishman fight. So it was worldwide. Made huge headlines in New York and across America and in Britain and of course in Ireland. But there would have been a lot of people from Kilnamona would have been waiting for a wire to come through to see if he had won or what, because mobile phones weren't around anywhere for certain, or emails. But
there was no laptops either.
Yeah, there was great celebration in Kilnamona. They rolled out a barrel of tar and set fire to there where Whelan's quarry is there as you go up to Kilnamona, and was one for the place. So that was
just back to his just back to his style, the way he fought. As you said, normally at the time the two lads would come out and they'd go tearing the hammer and tongs, but he had this real defensive style, not a negative side, but a defensive style. It worked well for him, and maybe he had so many fights. Like there was a great fighter called Mayweather there a few years ago in America. He was unbeaten at welterweight or something different weights. I won't say it was the exact same style, but he was just much the same kind of defensive system. So he really came up with this himself, and he really suited him down to the ground.
Yeah, well, my theory is that he was fighting on a very regular basis. You didn't get to 6 months apart. They were probably fighting once a month, you know, and fighting the toughest of guys. So you weren't going to go out and stick your chin out there to be hit by, you know. So for to survive as a journeyman fighter, you didn't want to get hurt, like. So I think that's how he developed that style. Like, he could beat these guys by being smart with his feet and with his, you know, kept his chin out of the way, and he developed a great style. There was a great story about my uncle who went to America and he met Jack Dempsey. My uncle Mikey Rinn from Innis, God rest him, from Kilnamona, God rest him. And Mikey went and he met Jack Dempsey. When Jack Dempsey was an old man at the time, but he said to him, "Would you have?" And they were boxing in the same era. Yeah. And McTigue had boxed at heavyweight as well. Like, you wouldn't be allowed to do it. I mean, he was the welterweight, a light heavyweight, and he fought heavyweight, so that wouldn't happen today. Like, it wouldn't be. My uncle asked Jack Dempsey, would you have beaten McTigue? And he said, "I would." He said, "I was a stronger man." He said, I was a bigger man. I was a stronger man. I would have beaten him," he said. And then he added the caveat, "if I could have hit him." So that was the compliment to McTigue. You know, he was so hard to hit.
Yeah, and of course,
it was a great compliment.
And of course, Jack Dempsey would go down as one of the greatest heavyweight champions of all time. He was a ferocious fighter. He'd come out, he'd lay out before him, and in the history books, in 100 years' time, whoever will be around when they talk about boxing, they'll still talk about Jack Dempsey. So that was a fair compliment to get from that man, who fought in the same era.
Yeah, it was a great compliment to get from him. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a nice touch. But there was great fighters around that time. Paul Berlbank, he was an American German, and he fought McTigue. He beat McTigue in 1925 for the title, and McTigue came back and fought him again, but they didn't. It wasn't a title fight when he fought him the next time. But he actually knocked him out. So, you know, they took the title off him. He knocked him out, but it wasn't a title fight. But it still was a huge crowd in Yankee Stadium, I think, to see that fight. They're talking about Katie Taylor fighting in Croke Park, and hopefully someday we'd see that she would attract a crowd of 80,000. Mike McTigue fought in front of 90,000, I think, in Yankee Stadium, and he was a huge draw in New York. Obviously, when you become a world champion, you're a huge draw. So he took an awful lot of fights, and maybe probably took too many fights really in the end. You know, a lot of boxers in that era probably stayed on a bit too long.
Yeah.
You know, he was my granduncle. He's my family in Kilmore are very proud of him, of his achievements. You know, the last few years of his life weren't the best. Obviously, he was ill health mainly, like, you know, but you know, he was you know, to become a world champion, especially back then, like, you had to have some character, like, you
Yeah.
just had to have that character to fight those guys that he fought. He fought the best. He fought the cream of what was there, you know, and he was a very strong character, obviously, to reach the heights that he reached.
Yeah.
So 200 years now since that
Yeah.
fight. So
And just maybe for some of the modern people nowadays, I think there's 16 or 17 weight divisions. As you mentioned, you might have 4 or 5 champions in each division, but at that time there was only 8 weight classes and 1 champion, and that was it. So there was 8. There were known across the world. The 8 champions was there. They were
yeah,
worldwide known all over the world. So there was no such thing
yeah,
as 3 or 4. You couldn't pick the soft one. You just one. You had to just face the man who was there in front of you
yeah.
and take on the best. So he was worldwide known. It's probably different to maybe nowadays would say. So it was actually unique at the time, and looking back at it from now, from this 100 years distance.
That's right. Yeah, he was undisputed champion, and all the champions that time were undisputed. There was nobody that you didn't have to fight anyway. You didn't avoid anyone easy. You couldn't pick your fights. You fought who was put in front of you, and you know, the top fighters of those days all fought each other, like. And,
Yeah, there was no
you
duck in
know,
the
boxing.
dog. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just so we know,
they
Nick,
said it.
yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, there's a Facebook page there. It's called The Bold Mike McTigue. It's a Facebook group. The name of it there was, I don't know who runs it, but there's great
right.
information on it. It's a public group. Anyone can join it. There's a great picture of Mike on it. It's called The Bold Mike McTigue. So I don't know, is it one of your relations or
That's
someone
right.
that's,
It's actually Monica McTigue, who's actually his niece. She's the last of that family, we say the youngest, and she's actually his niece, and she put together that. So we all go into that for a bit. You know, there's an awful lot of information, and she's great the way she has it. She pulled a lot of stuff together and put it up, stuff that we'd never seen, and the clips of fights and that. You know, he fought Jack Sharkey in a heavyweight title fight, in a heavyweight fight, and he was doing really well on 6 rounds. And but I think it went to the 10th round, but the fight was stopped because Mike McTigue burst a blood vessel. But he had gone toe to toe with Jack Sharkey, had fought the best in the world as well. So, you know, to step up from light heavyweight to heavyweight, you know, it wouldn't have just would not happen today. He wouldn't be allowed. He went from welterweight to light heavyweight, which was a big jump back then, and then he fought heavyweight as well. So he was European heavyweight champion. He was light heavyweight champion of the world, and he was Canadian welterweight champion. And that's a record nobody else will ever have, because you could not do that today. You wouldn't be allowed. He was much lighter than most of the guys he fought, actually, like, and especially when he fought at heavyweight, he was giving away. He was giving away 14, or it's some, I think it was 14 pounds, or maybe 28 pounds. I think he was actually giving away, which is almost 2 stone. He was giving away to Sharkey, like, so you had to be able to box to stay out of that, you know, that much weight coming against you, you know, powerful men. So that was fairly incredible to do that, like.
yeah. And I suppose, I suppose we will talk the 100th anniversary this year. So I know there's a big committee involved, and I know there's several people involved, and you might want to mention a few names, and you're having a big event coming up. Would you just like to talk about that, or?
Yeah, well, the 100th anniversary, about 3 to 4 years ago, I was in my cousin's house in Ennis, Kevin Rinn, my first cousin, and he said to me, you know, it's 100 years and a few years' time since Mike won the title fight, and, you know, so we had a chat and we decided we were going to do something about it, like, to mark the occasion. We didn't know what we were going to do, but fairly, came up with the idea that we would put some sort of a plaque or a statue at Kilnamona Cross to him. And I had 2 things in mind. One, to Kilnamona Cross. Kilnamona is slightly up. It's about a mile up from the half mile from the main road. So I thought it'd be a nice marker to mark Kilnamona as well. So that was part of the thinking we put into. We got Michael McTigue, who is the relative of his stonemason, and we asked Michael, it would go excellent. We asked him because he's a stonemason. If we probably wouldn't have been able to afford to put up what we're putting up, but Michael is doing the work, basically free of charge. We have to buy the stone to prepare the site and different things. But we've had great help from people. And Jeanette McCormick, who was a grandniece as well, came on board. So there was 4 of us on the committee, and we've worked well together. We've unusual for Rins and McTigues not to fight, but we didn't. And what I must say is that the people in the morning came out and drove and they supported us. We had a couple of events, one in Innis and one in Ina, and the people of Ina came out and really supported us as well. We had a couple of great nights, and we had held raffles and stuff like that, and we made a few bob, and we had a GoFundMe page, and we got money from all over, but especially from Kilnamona and the Ina area. There were people donated very generously. Like, people in Kilnamona are great in that sense. They really got behind us. We couldn't do this otherwise, so we've near enough money now to well, we've the stone is done now. Michael McTigue has made a fantastic job, but it's just a square stone with his likeness that will kind of stand out and nicely inscripted. And we're going to have a day on the 18th of March on a Saturday, the day after St. Patrick's Day, the day after the 100th anniversary. Paddy's Day is a busy day for most people, St. Patrick's Day, so we decided to have the day after. So we're really looking forward to unveil it. It'll be unveiled. We decided, and I was very much in favour of another great Kilnamona man, and we picked Fergal Hegarty because he's a double All-Ireland champion, and we thought it'd be fitting for him to unveil it for us. And Fergal has agreed to come along, and we're delighted with that. Clare FM have been very good to us. RCB Radio have been good to us. All the media and Clare have been very good to us. Clare Record, Clare Champion, and a lot of other people. Clare Carl has been very good to us. Daly has been good to us. Johnny Flynn has been good to us. They've made donations to us, and we're very grateful to those people. And there's lots more, but I don't want to be mentioning too many because I'm going to leave. Obviously, going to somebody out, but. The Good House in Ina was very good to us, and the Grove in Innis gave us a venue as well and gave us finger food. All those little things, they're not little things, they're all big, but they all helped us along our way and made life easy for us, because everything costs money now. So, which we're nearly there. 2 more weeks, and we'll be done, and the glad rags and heading.
And is there people? Is there family members coming from the States, or would there be relations in England or from abroad? Are they able to come home or to actually come to the event?
We got a lot. We have a lot of relations in America, and some of them are going to come, and they send money. And I've got loads of cousins in Salisbury and London. I've got the Rins and the Howards in Salisbury. And in London, I have lots of cousins, the Howards in London. They were very good to us, and they sent us on money as well. And we're hoping to see some of them will come. I know some of the Rins are coming from London as well. And, so it should be kind of a family gathering, the diaspora, gathering up as many as we can. Cecilia is his granddaughter. She lives in Youghal in Cork, actually. And we're hoping that she'll be able to travel on the day and have her as well. My own family be coming, and so we're having a bit of an ease up in the hall in Kilnamona after as well, and buy teas, and who knows where to go after that. But it's we thought it was well worth doing, and we're glad we embarked on it now, and we're going to actually put up the statue this week. We won't be unveiled, but we'll have it standing up anyway. So. There's an awful lot of work in doing something like that, Paul, as you well know. There's a lot of red tape and stuff that you have to get around, but people have been very generous to us, and Clare County Council have been very more than generous to us. I'd have to say that as well, and people that I haven't mentioned now, but there's who just helped us so much. So,
and are you aware, maybe 50 years ago? Are you aware 50 years ago, was there anything in the newspapers or over the years about him, or in the media, national level or local level? Are you aware of anything of that in Ireland or Clare? Have you researched that, I suppose?
Yeah, yeah. There was a lot of. We're still finding stuff, like, and there's
Yeah.
the Clare down through the years have put up a lot. The old Clare people, Joe Berhaltic, for instance, now has done an awful lot on McTigue and written a lot about him as well. Like, so, there's a lot of stuff back along. Andrew Gallimore, which I mentioned, he was the man. Andrew Gallimore is a Welshman. He was in Dublin studying in UCD, I believe, and he came across Mike McTigue and he said, "This guy was a world champion." He said, "How come I heard nothing about him? Not hearing anything. Nobody knows anything about him, because he asked around. Nobody even knew. That many didn't really know, like." And so he did a lot of research and he decided to write a book. And it was from his book that they televised it as well. Like, they made kept out our place. My brother's has the farm now where McTigue was born, and they came down there and they did a great program on him, on his life. Andrew Gallimore, I suppose I don't agree with everything in the book. I thought that he kind of made him look bad towards the end, but the man was sick. That could happen to anybody, like,
Yes.
but he just took. I think he took a bit of it, maybe one fight too many. But Andrew Gallimore's book was really, I suppose it was a pivotal moment. So it was a lot of sources in it, and it opened up. I suppose what Andrew Gallimore did more than anything else was he opened up the conversation for us all, because we didn't know a whole lot, believe it or not, and since his book has come out, we've found a lot of stuff that came. There was a fellow from Clarecastle with Maloney, I think was his name, and he had an awful lot of stuff on McTigue and huge amount of memorabilia. And there was a pub in New York which was almost dedicated. We walk in, everything was almost all dedicated to Mike McTigue, and a lot of memorabilia there. The boxing gloves that he used for the fight were left to my uncle Mikey Rinn, God be good to him, and that's Kevin's father. And they're in the museum in Innis for anyone to see upstairs in the museum. So we're hoping to take them out for the day, for one day only. So there were the actual gloves, and so it's another thing. But yeah, there's been lots of stuff written about him. Lots of people. I would you believe I was in London earlier on this year? Well, and actually last year I went to London and I was in Gatwick Airport, and I just got into the lift, and when I turned around, there was a man coming into the lift, and I said, "Oh my God, Barry McGuigan." And it was Barry McGuigan. He was in London for whatever, and he just asked me who I was, and I told him who I was. And of course, I told him about Mike McTigue. Oh, he knew everything about him.
Right.
He had the book read, and he knew an awful lot about McTigue. And and a lovely man, Barry McGuigan. He didn't know me from Adam. We got out of the lift. He stayed talking to me for about 10 minutes, and he had to go and head off to get his flight. So the boxing world are very close. This family as well. So
Yeah. And it's
so
important. Yeah, I think it's important
sorry.
too that we recognise, even though 100 years ago the anniversary, but there was great success. I know above and done big. There was lads who won Olympic medals, maybe representing America, but there was
Absolutely.
great success 100 years ago. So it's important to recognise that and put it on the marker and have something permanent there to
Yeah.
when people are passing the road, they'll see that.
And the Gardeners won titles. The Gardner brothers, there were two brothers who won titles. They were from Lisnaverne, I believe, and they went to America and a little bit before my time, and they were world champions. I'd love if somebody would take the mental there and recognize these people in their own area, where they came from. They were very young. I think they were 12. One was 12 years of age when he went to America. And he learned boxing from boxing his brother outside in the back garden, fighting with his two brothers. There was three brothers actually in minute. Two of them became world champions, and the other fellow was a great boxer as well. So there's people like that all over the county who we should really recognize them and remember what how the great people that they were, like. So it's great. Other people, musicians, so many people in County Clare went across the water. They went to England, they went to America, and they were champions, like, you know, at what they did, like, you know. And great Claremen went across to America and made their mark, you know, as you know, even as politicians and different things, like, you know. And we probably don't know enough, you know. There's so much out there to be researched and looked at as regards people, you know, that left this great county and brought great honour to the county.
Yeah. Now, Nicholas, just for the last 2 minutes again, we've only about 5 minutes left before we're shut off. Just can you maybe give the details again of the just first of all, Mike McTigue, he was the world champion 100 years ago this year. He's back in City above, and what was the venue in Dublin? Do we know? Or what is
The De La Salle Theatre.
Right. Very good.
It was called the De La Salle Theatre. The fight was fought there. He trained out in Hoth for the fight while he was here. He was so that was the 17th of March 1923, St. Patrick's Night, that he fought that fight. There's a story he told himself that he was sitting. He used to tell this, you know, when he was retired from boxing, that when he was sitting in the corner and the fight was going on, there was a sentry guard. There was sentry guards all around the venue and in the venue, because they're afraid of what might have happened. Like, which the sentry guard apparently gave him a jab of his bayonet and tapped him in the leg and said, "Hey, McTigue, I've got 3 pounds on you. You better win this fight if you know what's good for you." So he used to love telling that story. So it's 100 years on St. Patrick's Day, and we're going to mark it in Kilnamona. Hopefully at around 2 o'clock in the day, we'll have the unveiling, and we're going to go up to the hall in Kilnamona, and there's going to be hot food for everyone that wants to come, and we'll have a member and have chats and stories and whatever, and a bit of music and a bit of whatever, and the stone will be across in future generations, and people who pass from other counties will probably look and say, who is that guy? And they might pull in and have a look and see, you know, and just to let people know what we're like till the morning.
Yeah.
The world champions.
Yeah. And we talk about the sculpture, of course, the fame, he made the sculpture outside Cusick Park of the great Michael Cusick, so he's a top class guy, actors reserve.
He is, and there was great credit due to Nacy Jordan, he was former great hurler who hurled with Whitegate, and Nacy was in respect for that, and nobody else but Nacy Jordan and Mike and his son, the 2 great stonemasons. They're one of the last of the old stonemasons who can do it by hand, you know. So we couldn't have got a better man, obviously, and he was the right man in the right place to do the job. And I've seen the stone. The stone is finished now. It looks absolutely fantastic. We're absolutely delighted with it. So it'll be there for posterity. And I suppose when I look back, I'll be able to say, well, that's one thing I was involved in anyway. Hopefully.
Yeah. And that cross, is that fellow from Whelan's Quarry? That cross, is it fellow from Whelan's Quarry?
Yeah, it's 5 miles from Innis, so it's about 3 miles past Whelan's Quarry, I suppose. There's a graveyard up on the hill there, the old Kilnamona graveyard there. That'll be the first you'd see, and then you come to Kilnamona Cross, and there used to be a lot of people hanging around there one time. If they could come back and tell the tales, I'm sure they would. When McTigue left Kilnamona, he would have left at a time when Kilnamona had just won 3 senior championships. They were a serious hurling team that time. Themselves and the Mills and Tulla were the 3 big teams, I think, in Clare at the time. So they had won their last title in 1908, and they had won back-to-back titles. So sport, you know, he would have played hurling as well. So and a lot of his people would have been involved in those teams. So he would have been sporting long before he left. Like, but boxing wouldn't have been on the horizon that time. It would be hurling and athletics mostly. So he got his shot at it anyway, and he took it.
Okay, Nicholas.